Hi, everyone. This is Gayatri Joshi from the law firm Sustainability Network. Really excited to have all of you participate in today's webinar that we are hosting with the ALA NYC chapter and the sustainability team. With the COVID pandemic, now states are starting to figure out how they want to potentially phase in reopening businesses and how businesses can do that. So that leaves the question for all of these businesses and law firms: how do we do that? How can we do it safely, and how can we do it sustainably? And it seems that things really change from week to week of what kind of guidance there is, what are some of the new trends and considerations that people are thinking about. So we've brought for you a really great panel of folks who can help give you some guidance and talk about some of those emerging trends and what things you should consider. So I'm going to do some really brief introductions just because we have a lot of folks and I want to make sure you have the ability to ask a lot of questions. We have Jen Taranto, and she is from Structure Tone. She's the Director of Sustainability, and she ensures the principles of sustainability and well-being are incorporated into client projects and everyday work practices and guides organizational strategy throughout Structure Tone. She has 21 years of experience in commercial real estate and is accentuated by her time spent in the field as a superintendent and a project manager. So she has real-world experience, which helps her solve problems, optimize solutions, and ultimately implement more sustainable processes. She is a founder of Built Environment Plus, the New England mission-driven sustainability nonprofit that focuses on a regenerative future, and a current board member, and she is recognized as a leader in the sustainable build environment. We also have Gail, and she's a management consultant, and she has acquired more than 25 years of professional experience in senior law firm management. Gail has initiated best practices in administrative operations, including financial accounting, lateral recruiting, personal day-to-day operations, systems management, and firm marketing. And she has served as an executive director at New York City and Philadelphia area law firms with various areas of practice. We also have Kevin Kennedy, and he is an executive vice president of Aronson. He has 40 years of selling and sales leadership for industry leaders in the New York metropolitan area. He's passionate about mentoring and growing sales professionals to become the absolute best. He has a diverse background, and he leads and mentors the sales teams in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, and focuses on different industry groups and vertical markets. We also have Richard Colucci, who is the owner and founder of Distinctive Offices. His firm specializes in refreshing occupied office space, and the goal for them is to give clients a fresh new feel without moving or losing business continuity. And then we have Mark Siegel, who is from Weeks Lerman. He has been with them since 1999, and he has 20 years of office products experience. Mark has been efficiently sourcing, negotiating, and purchasing materials on behalf of major contract customers and services nationally. And Mark and his team are directly responsible for over 1,000 clients and specializes in the legal industry. Mark is also on the board of Jack Martin Fund Next Generation, a charitable organization and premier donor to the Division of Pediatric Hematology Oncology at the Mount Sinai Center in New York. And we also have Ricky Dweck. He is from ECS, and he's been with them since 2009, where he serves as the executive vice president. And he works to streamline and optimize the intra and inter-team workflow at ECS, which specializes in development and deployment of turnkey lighting and control solutions for commercial office spaces. So we'll hear him talk about UV disinfection, energy retrofits, automation, operational management. And then we have Marion, and Marion's she is the director of sales and marketing for the Le Méridien New York Central Park. And she is a 17-year hospital professional with experience in new hotel openings, rebrandings, and serving as the leading force in sales in markets across the U.S. So right now, she oversees 5 hotels and on the sales side of the operations of Le Méridien, New York, Philadelphia, Onview, Autograph Collection by Marriott, Residence in Weehawken, and Le Méridien in Arlington. So we have a great lineup today. So just to kind of give you logistically of how we're going to run this, we're going to start off with Jennifer Taranto from Structure Tone. We're going to let our folks talk for 5 to 7 minutes and tell you what's happening. We'll take a couple of your questions, and then we'll save the rest of those questions for the Q&A session. You can ask your questions in the question box, and you can also raise your hand. And so with that, it would be great if, Jennifer, if you wanted to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. I am excited to be here and talk to you today. Just waiting for you to advance slides.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no worries. So I wanted to start and think big picture and talk about the entire building. Just to kind of get us started before we sort of get into the more granular pieces. And what we want is we want our buildings to actually contribute to our health and well-being. Instead of potentially accentuate the sickness. So I'm going to give you some tips and tricks. I think big picture, what I really, really want to strongly convey to you guys is that there are trade-offs to everything. And I'll run through what those are, and that there are no silver bullets. So you want to go ahead and advance. The first concept that I really want to talk about is indoor air quality. And the biggest impact on your indoor air quality is going to be your HVAC system. But before I sort of peel apart the layers of that onion, as a tenant in a building, what you should know is that there are 3 major things that contribute to your environmental footprint in that building. The first one is your lighting. That's going to be one of your big energy uses. Your plug load is going to be your second, and then your HVAC system is going to be your third. So if we're thinking about sustainability, what we want to also think about is that for lighting, you may be running at a more unoccupied rate than you used to be. So think about where you have occupancy and vacancy sensors. Where can you turn off lights? Or are your lights set on a timer that the building controls? And should you be having conversations with the building about truncating that schedule of what your open business hours are so that you can save on your energy bills when nobody's there? So that's one. The second one, plug load. What do you got that's plugged in your space that's on when nobody's there, right? Figure out how to unplug it, figure out how to turn it off, and get some savings out of that while we're running in either a slightly unoccupied mode or a modified occupancy. Make sure that you've got people who are looking at those things. And then the last one, the really more complex one, is the HVAC system. So I'm going to dig in around a few concepts here. Air filtration is the first one I want to tackle. I know there were some questions previous. People are interested in changing their filters, right? So having this conversation up front with your landlord about what the system is capable of handling, right? No 2 systems, no 2 buildings you may be handling. Your firm may have multiple buildings that it's in across the United States, and none of those systems are going to look anything like each other. But your facilities people know what you can do and you can't do. So have that conversation with them. Maybe right now your system has a MERV 11. That's pretty typical. And for those of you that are on the line that don't know what MERV is, it's a minimum efficiency rating value. And the higher the number on the filter, the more particulates, the smaller the particulates that it'll grab. So higher numbers for filters are better, lower numbers are worse. But here's the trade-off. Also, when you move to those higher levels of filtration, not only can the system potentially not handle it, but you're going to increase the energy usage because it's got to use the motor, the fan motors to pull through those filters that are going to be a little bit more dense. So that's number one. Air exchange rates are another one, right? So in our buildings, what we do is we typically recirculate air, because when we're not in what we call free cooling mode, when we're not using the economizer, when the temperatures aren't quite right outside and we can't pull in the fresh air or use that cooling to help cool our system for free, we're sort of limiting the amount of fresh air that comes in, and we're recirculating it so that we can save energy, right? one of the things they're telling us, the CDC is saying, is more fresh air is better, right? So if you have operable windows in your space, you could encourage people to start opening the windows. There's a trade-off there, right? Temperature is your trade-off, right? Especially if you're in New York City, or I happen to be in Boston. When it gets hot and humid in the summer, we're going to be trading off fresh air for thermal comfort, right? So again, big trade-offs. Even if we open up our dampers to allow the amount of outside air, not all systems are able to heat or cool it properly. I know that in the summertime, systems won't be able to keep the cool temperatures if you have as much allowed outside air as the system can handle. And similarly, in the winter, your units might crash on cold temperatures. Again, have these conversations with your facilities guys, find out what it is. Understand that they're going to have to keep tweaking it as you go, and just keep those lines of communication open. Humidity is another interesting one. We do not generally control humidity in buildings, but they know that when you're in that magic band of 40 to 60% relative humidity, that there is a lower rate of being able to pass contagions around. Flu has been shown to respond well to this, but high humidification also has bad context inside the building. You get more mold and mildew growth, right? It ruins your indoor air quality. So most building management systems cannot control humidity. These systems that do are very expensive. We see them installed in places where it really matters, like museums around artwork and those kind of things. But I think that in the future, we may start seeing interiors move to include some of these things. Pressurization is another one. We see that a lot in hospitals. What pressurization does is it moves air through a building from the cleanest air places to the worst air places, right? And inside of an interiors, we typically focus on janitors' closets, copy rooms, and bathrooms. Those are the bad air places. And so we're pulling air from cleaner air places into those worst air places. And there may be some strategies around pressurization depending on the age of your building, depending on other opportunities, the way your layout works, HVAC systems. Again, really have open, candid conversations with your building facilities people. And then UV light integration is another one. I think one of the panelists is going to talk about UV lighting as an option further down, but within HVAC systems, we typically incorporate these into the air handling units. They have been known to kill bacteria and those kind of things on cooling coils. The jury's still out about actually being able to kill the virus in the air because the air does move quickly through these systems, but we're starting to see conversations, and there's a lot more research that needs to be done. The other caveat I would say about UV is that it is disruptive to human health. So you should not be exposing yourself directly to UV of any spectrum, A, B, or C. Jury is out on how that will affect people's long-term health if they do get direct exposure. And then air quality monitoring. There are some simple systems. They're not all accurate. You may find that people bring in systems that they bought on Amazon into your workplace, right? But there are many of the larger buildings that we find, especially in New York City, that do typically do indoor air quality testing on a quarterly basis or on a biannual basis in your building. And they should be able to make that testing available to you. So again, all big conversations to be having with the building. Before we leave this slide, I do want to address, so buildings are meant to be, or all of the systems in a building are designed around people actually being in the building, right? And so we haven't been in these buildings for a while. So do not take for granted that when you go back into your space that your system is operating normally. I think that you should walk around the space, be diligent, be vigilant about looking for places where mold and mildew may have grown while people were away from the building. Also, drains may have bad smells from them because they weren't getting, the water from people mopping bathrooms wasn't getting into those drains. So you're getting some backup smells from those drains. And then pests is another one that can happen in buildings. So be on the lookout and be vigilant for those. You in the next slide? Cleaning is another big one. Again, your building controls so much of the cleaning in your space. Typically, when you signed a lease, there was a portion of that lease agreement that stated explicitly what they were going to clean and with what frequency, but they may have changed that plan. So ask them, what is the new plan? Like, what can I expect to be getting from the building now that obviously things have changed? And transparency. Cleaning should be done openly. It used to be that like we never wanted to see the cleaning people. And I think that there's going to be more openness to people wanting to see things being cleaned visibly, knowing that it's been cleaned, and keeping logs of when things have been cleaned and with what frequency, so that when I walk into the pantry, I can see the last time the counter was wiped down or the last time the coffee maker was wiped down. I think there's going to be a lot of call for that transparency. Supplemental cleaning. If you designate somebody in your office, internal staff, to do supplemental cleaning, I highly encourage you to train that person. It's not just like, here's a bottle of 409 and a wipe, get after it. Because there's a difference between cleaning and disinfecting. And so what we want to be doing is disinfecting places. But that also comes with training them on the cleaning steps, any precautions, any PPE that they need to be wearing, how to store those chemicals, and then purchasing within your organization. What chemicals are you going to purchase? And to that, the products, again, transparency. Make sure you have read the SDS sheets for these products. Avoid products that cause asthma and skin reactions, genetic defects. I mean, cancer goes without saying, but not all of the approved EPA disinfectants on their list are okay for human health. So do your research, figure out what you're going to use and what you're not going to use. And then the final thing I'll say quickly about cleaning is there's lots of talk about antimicrobials, right? Jury is out on antimicrobials. They've shown limited benefits across the board. Some of the chemicals used in antimicrobials have been banned by the FDA. Big clients like Kaiser Permanente are no longer using interior products that have antimicrobials in them. And those products are known to cause harm in the environment long term. They're toxic to aquatic life. If you're thinking about antimicrobials, really, really go through it with your design team and be judicious and really understand what benefit you're trying to get. One of our technical staff in our office always says, look to the big guys. Is NASA doing it? Is MIT doing it? Are the hospitals doing it? And if they're not, there's a reason. And most hospitals are not using antimicrobial products. So I think that's a big one. Next slide. I didn't want to overlook well-being. I think you should remember that people, these statistics are from the CDC and they were pre-COVID statistics, right? At least 1 in 5 workers experience common mental health problems like anxiety and depression. And people are coming back scared, right? So you should really be thinking about overly communicating your healthcare benefits. If you have EAPs, those employee assistance programs, make sure everybody knows what they are. But something simple like signage too. Make sure you're communicating in a way that's friendly through your signage. Consider what colors you're using in your signage. Don't put a big red, put on a mask, exclamation point. Make it more friendly. They're let's wear masks. It seems cheesy, but I think that we don't work in environments like manufacturing where we're used to seeing neon orange and bright red colors. Those do create anxiety. But we are used to seeing signage like welcome back. Let's wash hands to protect each other. I think there are ways that things can be communicated through signage. What does your new journey look like through your office space? And then pair that signage with your communication campaign, right? So that people are seeing this repetition. And it should also reflect your brand and your culture, because that's going to connect people back to the workplace and give them a sense of belonging. Next slide. And I promise this is my last one. The last little piece is we've got to keep our eye on the prize, right? We don't want to lose traction on maintaining sustainability. We want to try to increase cleaning versus disposability, right? So where there are opportunities that you can still take your reusable water bottle to the bevy machine, right? There's got to be a log at the bevy machine that says, when was the last time it was cleaned? You can still take your mug to the coffee machine, but when was the last time the coffee machine was cleaned, right? And that there's an expectation of the employees to also be cleaning up and wiping down things when they're done with them. The second one, we are in urban environments. You guys are in an urban environment. Not everybody's going to be super happy about getting back on public transportation. So think about what you can do for bicycle infrastructure. Again, talk to your building. Is there a place where people can park bicycles that's safe? Can you put a bicycle repair kit, make it available for other people in the office? And then, sign on to City Bike and other bike share programs to make sure that people have access. If they've got to run quick errands in the city, instead of getting on the subway, maybe they can do that. And then my final point is promote reusable masks. Maybe get masks that are branded, but again, pair it with your signage and your communication, and just try to be positive about it. And with that, I'm going to hand it off.
Okay, great. If anyone has a couple questions, you can ask them. But we have someone who actually had a comment and said that New York State has required that all firms develop a reopening safety policy, reopening plan, and must certify that it has such a plan before reopening their business. And so Scott has also given us the link for this template, at least for New York State, and he says that it includes requirements that include businesses keeping cleaning logs. Okay, well, if there's no questions for now, you can save your questions for later and just use your chat box or the questions. Gail, thank you, Jennifer. We're gonna kind of talk to you a little bit later with questions. Gail, it'd be great for you to start talking about some of the workplace policies. Okay, so we're gonna skip Gail for now, and we're gonna go to, so Gail has this some really great thoughts on workplace policies and things that we have to institute. We're just gonna move on for now until she joins, and we are going to talk to Aronson about things that you need to think about in terms of your space and designing your space. So it would be great, Kevin and Rosemary, if you wanted to kick us off.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for the opportunity to talk. And my colleague, Rosemary Farrell, you can't see her because we're limited with the system, but we both say hi. I'm going to try and run through this pretty quickly. Aronson has been engaged in a number of safety audits with clients or clients coming and asking us to, how should they prepare their workspace to come back to the office. So if you could go to the next slide. Our approach is basically everything is all surrounding what the guidelines of the CDC. Everything that we're recommending or suggesting is it's really up to the client or an end user to determine which factors they want to put in. But what we are doing is we do first a workplace assessment, and which we're taking a look at the space from dimensions. We're taking a look to make sure how can we set up things for the 6 foot distancing, and evaluating how people will commune or communicate, if you will, and how we're dealing with collaborative areas. We also are not losing sight of whether it be the governmental policies, as well as how the companies themselves want to adapt and adopt some of the changes that have to occur. And then through all of this, we come up with recommendations, and then and how they would be implemented. So the next slide. So if you take a look at how we do things, the audit determines the weaknesses or hotspots that need to be considered. We take the assessment phase, which is going to be what is everything looking at now and how are things going to be looked at in the future. So if you take a look down at the cluster of workstations on the left, that's pre-COVID, right? And then we're identifying areas. Green is good, yellow is cautionary, something needs to be done. And if we had red, and I'll show you in a little while where red areas can be. And the red lines that you're seeing is what we're recommending or taking a look at, those are areas of concern. And if you just go, if we're looking at workstations that have a 54-inch high or higher barrier, whether it be a screen, a panel, and it's seated, in other words, no adjustable height, then those people as seated are protected. We're also taking a look then at for adjustable height desks, it really needs to be somewhere in the range of 65 inches high. So if you're looking at the cluster on the right, that has now implemented, or the items that you're seeing in green are areas we are recommending that we would need to add a panel or add screens. So if you can go to the next slide. So again, here's on the right side, you're seeing the key, green, yellow, red, the red lines, and then red dots. All right, so this is a floor plan for one of our clients. What we do is we take a look at dimensionally. So I'm gonna go to take a look at the private offices, for example. So dimensionally, we want to be 6 feet apart. Okay, now if we can't do 6 feet apart, we're going to suggest maybe there's a barrier that would be put on the desk, a clear barrier, so people can communicate that way. But if you take a look, and I'll use the office that's on the left side, where it shows that one of those chairs is 7 feet apart, it's irrelevant what the second guest chair is, because the two people side by side is not within that 6 foot. So we're recommending with those chairs in red that either the chair would be removed, the chair would be covered in some way, shape, or form with a ribbon, or whether a sign or a chair bag, to make those offices usable. Going to the right from those left offices, there's that conference room that's in red. It's red because regardless of the amount of the barriers that we would put in, and even wayfinding, if we're putting directional arrows on the floor, you're still not going to be able to accommodate all the people that room was initially set up for. However, if we remove the chairs, as I mentioned, we put a barrier on the table, then we can accommodate some people within those conference rooms, or within this particular conference room. Then you can see on the floor in the green, as we walk around the hallway space, green is good. Green, by virtue of decals and perhaps freestanding barriers, you truly can separate people, and you can also create your directional and how you want to see things, how you want the flow of people going, similar to if you've gone to the supermarket recently. And then I get into the red lines. The red lines is what I said before. These are areas within this floor plan that we really need to address with barriers, how to keep people apart. So if you can go to the next slide. All right, so the next 5 slides are going to be some solutions. Okay, so in this particular case, I'll go back to the 6 foot distancing. All right, we're able to provide distancing and based upon, again, that 6 foot guideline from the CDC. And we address this through barriers, or we address it through social distancing. So in this particular case, while those two people on the left side are 54 inches apart, if you're looking at the sketch on the left side, you're seeing the barrier in front of them, and that's an adjustable height table, obviously. That barrier needs to be higher. It can be glass, plexiglass, it could even be fabric. And that is providing the proper distancing. And one of the things I should have mentioned, what we're also taking into account as we do our audits is if you take a look at Connecticut as an example, because we don't know what the guideline is going to be for New York yet. Population within an office in Connecticut, when we open up our office on June 1st, is 50% of the people. So we're also addressing that with our client, some of it is by social barriers and physical barriers, and some of it is by the population reduction until perhaps there's the vaccine or some other remedies that are going to come into play. The other thing I also want to say is that through the rest of the panelists, this is not a solution that is just going to be done with furniture. It's going to be done with lighting. It's going to be done with HVAC and a whole lot of other things. So there's not just one standalone solution to remedy the coming back to the office. So if you can go to the next slide. And these next few slides are showing on the left side, this is what this looked like prior to the COVID-19 situation. And then our green slides, what we've did, or the slides to the right showing the green. We've added end panels, we've added screens. We are recommending wayfinding on the floor, both with arrows, but also showing where you're at 6 feet apart. The next slide, please. Okay, so
you know what, if I can just interrupt you for 1 second. We had this question from Harvey who said, for seated station, how did you determine 54 inches panel height is adequate?
So it's going by the average height male and the average height female. Average height female is 5'2", average height male is 5'10". At 54 inches high, a 6'2", 6'3" inch male can be sitting, and his face is below the panel. And 65 inch high, his face is also below the panel, and that's how that was determined. If there's a population that within an office that does have higher requirements, we can certainly go with higher screens. And now and hopefully that answered that question, and I can certainly answer more for sure. So as we have all seen over the last 5 to 7 years, benching has become such a huge solution for clients, but it really doesn't do anything to really help with the COVID-19 situation. So you're seeing on the left, this is the way it was before. This one happens to have a panel separating people, but again, we've got adjustable height desks, and that panel is now not providing any barrier when somebody's standing. So again, we've offered, or we're recommending gallery panels on the end, screens, glass screens going on top, and we're also looking at the furniture itself. If you look at the files on the left, if we just by virtue of moving those files to the center, it's going to even further distance people from each other. And then it's subtle if you can see it. The barrier in between those two people on the right, where the files are, that barrier is also, we're recommending extending it past the work surface so that when people are engaged in work, they're sitting inside a panel rather than just out in the air. Next, please. Very much same situation. This one happens to be the current desks on the left. They have a screen that does go up and down with the desk. So we don't need to do anything with that, but we also need on the right, as you can see in the blue, we need to add some side barriers, and it's very much the same as what was in the prior slide. And then the next slide is going to show a private office. So the private office on the left, it's got 2 guest chairs. Again, this particular office, it's not really affording an opportunity to have unless there was a barrier put on the desk, which in this particular case really would become very restraining to the person sitting at the desk. But if there was so without a barrier, we would recommend removal of the chairs. We would also we're also recommending that at every doorway, that a graphic is put in to show how many people can occupy a room, and also putting on the floor where that 6 foot would be. So allowing people to really become more comfortable and safe where they are. And then the next is really it's a conference area, and it's what I was mentioning before. Okay, so this conference room happened to be set up for 10 people. 10 people can't fit in that room. However, the room is the size of this particular room. It affords us, if you notice on the right, there are circles drawn on the floor. Those circles, we're not necessarily suggesting you put circles on the floor. They'd wear out unless it was being done with carpeting. But the circles on the floor are 6 foot diameter. And in this particular room, if we put people in the corner and we put people in the center, at the table, along with the screens that we've added to the desktop, and on top of that, we put in signage, don't sit here, and again, the wayfinding on the floor, and also where you can stand. And one of the things I don't believe that I mentioned is so many of our clients not knowing where things are going to be a year and 2 years from now, they're not sure that they want to make these changes permanent. So a lot of the solutions that we're looking at, a lot of things that we're recommending, we are trying to come up with, and you can go to the next slide, I'm sorry. A lot of the things that we're going to be coming up with are temporary. So in this particular slide, and there's so, I could have literally 70 slides showing different product lines or products available. And this is not a sales opportunity, it's to give you a visual of how some people are doing things. So here's some barriers for desks. The next slide is going to show you some barriers that are dividing space. And some of those are affixed to the floor, some of those are affixed to the wall, and some of those are actually mobile. And some of them are not, they're freestanding and stationary. When we're looking at that signage, we also we can't lose sight of taking into account ADA concerns. So you can't just put up a divider if it's going to prevent the proper spacing for wheelchairs, et cetera. And then the last slide for product solutions, and I think one of the other panelists might be talking about this, is signage, where the signage should go, how it should be applied, what signs should be applied. And again, if you go to the left, it's a lobby area. There's a lot of things that we're seeing are going to happen in a lobby area, whether it be hand sanitizers, how people are going to be taking people's temperatures. Obviously, as I said before, some of this stuff has a furniture solution, some of it does not. The office flow in the center, how many people can fit in that conference room and where should they go? And then instructional signs, don't sit here, here's where, don't, you know, what else do we have? Wearing face masks, arrows on the floor, etc. And then the last slide is basically Aronson is here to help provide solutions and recommendations. Again, I want to emphasize it's all based upon CDC guidelines. It's all taken into account other factors that Aronson doesn't have, that we don't provide the solution, but it's what the client wants to do, what the government is saying, and also the other consultants that are working with the client, how it all interacts. So unless there are questions, that's Aronson's approach to helping our clients help their force get back to work.
Okay, excellent. Does anyone have any questions for Kevin? Okay, I think we have one hand raised for a little bit, so I'm going to unmute Rick. Hi, Rick. Do you have any question you want to ask? Okay. Well, Rick, when you want to ask your question, just type it in the chat box, and I'll let you ask your question to the group. So let's see. We do have. Let's see if there's another question. So from Lisa, how do you determine the number of people able to use a conference room? Just on 6 feet or so, is it based on square footage? Thanks.
No, we're not going based upon square footage because the size of a room could sound like a large room with square footage, but it may not be, the shape of the room may not allow certain things. No, we're doing basically drawing out, as I showed in the private offices, and I don't recall in the floor plan that we were showing with the dimensions. I don't recall if the conference room showed the dimensions, but it's through barriers on tables as well as measuring out 6 feet.
Okay, and another question we have is from Nellie. So would you do an on-site assessment?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, if you have any other questions, we're going to save them for a little later just because we can move on. We're going to listen to now. Thank you, by the way, Kevin. We're going to listen now to Richard, and he's going to talk a little bit about what distinctive offices can do and thinking about your space and how to make people comfortable.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. Our focus is on making your employees feel safe with their surroundings when they come back. You know, the PPE is very important, and you have to have the masks and the hand sanitizers and the cleanliness. But appearance is important. We don't want your employees to feel like they're working in an institution with too much signage, stickers, and blue tape all over the floor, like when we all see it in our supermarkets. So our focus has been working with our design firms, with our clients, to come up with creative ways to install carpeting on the floor to create traffic patterns, to create barriers with, if you will, without putting walls up. Private offices, we're taking and we're separating the room into 2/3 and 1/3 so that people know they can't cross the line of the different color carpet as they go in. We're replacing a lot of traffic patterns with specialty carpeting that really is designed to pull in all of the allergens, the dust, as opposed to hard surfaces, which have become really popular over the years with the traffic areas. Unfortunately, the dust jumps all over the place, and you don't want that happening. We also, with these products that we're talking about, you can clean them all the time with shampoo. They dry instantly, unlike standard carpet that you need 48 hours or so to really fully dry, and we can shampoo almost every day. We're touching up with paint all of the high traffic areas. We're looking to do this again to give people a sense of comfort when they come back to the office. Our focus is really making people feel like they came back to something new. It smells clean, it feels clean, and they're going to be much more comfortable is what our sense is from everybody we're speaking with. When you're reconfiguring furniture, it's a great time for us to work in conjunction with the furniture dealers that are doing that. When they're separating desks, we're coming in, again, we're replacing under those desks. A good time to do so. Our big focus is on business continuity. That's really what we're talking to everybody about. Moving, probably not the greatest thing to do right now. None of us know where our businesses are going to be, a year from now. So what we've been working with the real estate community, the design community about is if you're a client, if you're a law firm that has a lease that's coming up in March of next year, probably the last thing you want to do is tell your employees in January that you have to move in March. They just got feeling comfortable. They don't want to be disrupted. They know their commute. They're comfortable taking their bicycle or even their subway at one point. You don't want that to have to happen. So we've been recommending that you talk about renewing for at least a 3-year term. Give yourselves 18 months to pause, get people back, get people to feel comfortable again, working, walking, going to their local delis that they used to go to, and then also assess, do you need so much space? Maybe you'll need double the space, we hope, but maybe you need half the space. You're not going to know that day one. So we're really working with people now, say, take a pause, take a break, and come in, reconfigure furniture, touch up paint, replace carpet where need to be, and just really ease into this. Don't have a knee-jerk reaction. We're also working with our plumbers with replacing areas that the hands-free faucets, which are very, very popular in the pantry, in the restrooms, but they're not as popular in pantries. We're being asked, I can't tell you how many times we're being asked these days to replace those and think about, can we do that? And the answer is yes. We're putting in hands-free faucets in pantries. If your firm does not have automatic light switch sensors when you walk into your rooms, that's a great place to change. less people touching the light switch in and out when they come in, all small little things. We're working with two firms right now that have very large boardrooms, 40-person type, boardrooms. These type of calls, video calls, Zoom calls, these team meetings, we feel will be the way of the future for the time being anyway, to have your town hall meetings, your board meetings. And what we're being asked to do is come up with creative ways to turn these 40-person rooms into 10 small offices, because the people want the private office. So these are a couple of things that we're working on. That's the short and sweet of it. So if you need help with design or budgeting, we'd be more than happy to come out and take a look at your spaces for you.
So we actually have one question, and Tina asks, is the signage carpet meant to be a permanent solution, or can it be removed once we are in the clear health-wise?
So if we're talking about carpet tile, it is totally designed to be a temporary thing, because we can easily swap it back out for the original carpet tile that was in there. Broadloom, we're suggesting that we are going to replace that completely, that area, if they have broadloom. Most days, most firms these days are going to carpet tile anyway. So it is permanent if it's broadloom, but not if it's carpet tile.
Okay. And Rick from before had a question for you. And so hopefully this makes sense. Richard's cleaning information should be given to our landlords. Yes?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
I'm not sure that I completely understand this, but Rick is asking if Richard's cleaning information should be given to landlords. You know what, I'm gonna, maybe Rick, if you can just maybe type that question again. I'm not really sure that I understood that, but ask that again. Does anyone else have questions for Richard? Okay, so, well, Richard, thank you. We're gonna go ahead and listen to Ricky, and he's going to talk about a little bit about lighting technologies and disinfection.
Great, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. A lot of good information so far. You could just jump to the next slide. So just a little bit of an overview. I've been in the lighting and controls from a sustainability and energy efficiency standpoint for over 11 years. The company's been around since 1995, primarily working with NYSERDA, Con Ed, utility programs across the country to, for sustainability and energy efficiency purposes. So like a couple of presenters touched on, from the sustainability standpoint, from lighting controls to all those occupancy sensors and such. Today specifically, I want to touch on the UV lighting technology. If you could jump to the next slide. I think that is what is very exciting and all the hype. So I sort of just jump right into the product, what it looks like. And really what's been exciting is that the manufacturer that we represent, Puro Lighting, was just in the news on Tuesday about how the MTA has adopted this technology for a pilot program to disinfect subways and buses. And we're really excited that we're able to offer that in a commercial office setting, same exact product, same technology for disinfection strategies and techniques within the office using the same product that the MTA is using. What was also really exciting is that Columbia University is involved in that pilot program to validate the efficacy of the product and its effectiveness. So they did confirm on Tuesday, sort of in an indirect way. It was not specifically tested on COVID-19. It was tested on COVID-2, which would confirm that the UV light can kill the virus. So just in terms of some general product highlights, and then we'll go through some more a couple pictures and some of the technology and how it works. But the manufacturer Puro came from a healthcare sort of application, where before March, this was installed primarily in health and hospital applications in order to prevent healthcare acquired infections and different from bacteria and viruses. And now we've adapted this technology into the offices, so for use in conference rooms after a conference. As I think Jennifer touched upon it in the beginning, that yes, no UV We do not recommend UV being used while anybody is present in the room. So this device is designed for unoccupied spaces, but can disinfect conference rooms, restrooms, elevators, break rooms, just about any of those spaces, or those small spaces, within little as 15 minutes. You could go to the next slide. Just to show you some practical uses, again, not all of them apply to what we're talking about today, but maybe from this group that there are clients that you might have in some of these other applications that are asking, well, what's going on? So this is currently being used in hotel room disinfection. It's great because this is a chemical-free disinfection technology. So for people that are wary or cautious or not to be using too many chemicals and treating rooms and spaces, this could be mounted mobile on a cart. It can be used to disinfect PPE. It could be mounted on a wall. The picture right above the clock shows there, and it can be mounted in the ceiling. So very versatile use, very simple and easy to use for a quick disinfection of a space. Go to the next slide. So very, very basic, because we could spend an hour on this just to understand where this technology lands and why and how it's effective, because there is a lot of UV product in the market right now. I know it was mentioned earlier about, I think on one of the questions about UV wands. Do we buy those? Do we not buy those? Basically, you don't want to expose yourself to anything in the UV scale. There's UVA, UVB, UVC. UVA and UVB is what we get from being outside, what the sun gives off, what causes sunburn and skin cancers and things like that. UVC is on Earth, is basically what the sun gives off, and it's protected by the ozone layer. So all UVC on Earth is basically man-made. And that's what has germicidal qualities, and that's what's known, especially in the medical field, is that for 20 plus years this has been used, UVC, for germicidal capabilities. Again, so the technology that or the application is just now a new application with a technology that's been around for a little while. So within this light spectrum, whether it's antibacterial, antimicrobial, or antiviral, the different wavelengths of UV have those qualities. The product that we're promoting right now uses a UVA, UVB, and UVC. It uses all three in order to effectively kill bacteria and viruses in the space. Go to the next slide. Another great question and some points that come out is that even before Columbia came out on Tuesday and said that this is effective in killing COVID-19, we followed the EPA emerging pathogen guidelines that classifies viruses into 3 categories, 1 being the most difficult to kill and 3 being the easiest to kill. COVID-19 is in the class 3 category, the easiest to kill. And we've had this product tested on norovirus, which is a class 1 virus, and it was effective in killing the class 1 virus. So therefore, legally, the manufacturer is allowed to make the claim based upon the EPA emerging pathogen guidelines. In addition, basically any certification for this device that we are able to get right now with UL, following EPA, the FCC, all of the different consumer electronics and and medical device certifications, the manufacturer has the clinical data and the certifications to support all the claims and its use in these environments. Go to the next slide. So this was a little bit of an older slide before Tuesday's news, but again, if you just Google MTA, Purell, MTA Ultraviolet, you'll see all the videos and all the news footage about that. Next slide. Some other applications, especially in law firms, has been really popular right now. Is if you wanted to mitigate as much risk as possible, limit any chance of having any sort of exposure, and how you could even think about practical uses, is by using this standalone self-contained UV reflective tent, which can be used to disinfect packages. So it can be used in mailroom applications. If you have any contractors coming in and you wanted to make sure that they're disinfecting their tools, it's basically an on-demand self-contained disinfection tent that you can plug the unit in, put anything inside, and disinfect what you need to disinfect in as little as 15 minutes. Next slide. And then these are just, again, I just threw some pictures, and you can just scroll through the pictures just to get a little bit of an idea of some of the practical use applications in what you can on-demand sanitize, sterilize using UV with limited chemicals and pretty quickly and efficiently.
So thank you. Thank you. You actually have a couple questions, so let me start with this one. So could users activate a timer to turn on at possibly 2 a.m. in the morning if installed in an office, particularly restrooms and kitchens?
Yes, so this unit actually has a built-in timer. So a very simple program. You could connect it to your computer. You can schedule it for time of day to do exactly that. You could also schedule it for multiple times a day. It's very versatile in how you can program and schedule all with an onboard scheduling. There's also a safety feature on here. There's a reverse occupancy sensor. So if it detects motion, it will not turn the unit on. So if you happen to have somebody in the restroom at 2 a.m. and that's when you programmed it, the unit will not turn on until that person leaves.
Okay. We had one question from Debbie if the UV ones were effective for disinfecting mail, but I think you answered that question.
So I'll just touch on that just because it's any UV, right? So UV should not be exposed to humans, UVA, UVB, UVC. So generally speaking, I don't think that if it's effective in killing a virus or a bacteria, you shouldn't be holding it in your hand, right? You shouldn't be in the room. You shouldn't be holding it in your hand. Why? Yeah, why? You know, like it doesn't make any sense. And there's a lot of those products that are coming in from overseas that make claims. And I think that is one of the things that also stands apart and why, again, you know, being in the business for 20 plus years in the lighting space, that we want to promote a manufacturer that has all of the clinical data, all of the certifications, and all of the safety features that will make sure to prevent any harm.
Okay, so I'm going to give you one more question, then we're going to save a few of these for later. But this one is from Trisha, and she asks, when will UV light systems be tested with COVID-19 virus to determine if it's a viable disinfection solution? And will this need to be approved by the CDC?
Okay, so one is COVID-19 samples are impossible to get. They're controlled by the government right now. So the best samples you have are COVID-2, which is in the same class. And what's maybe everyone said that's where all the CDC data is coming from, is the COVID-2. This is where it's coming from. So the best. So every day there are different manufacturers with different UV, and there are different studies coming out of what does and does not work, and how long does it work, and you know what does it take. So I think right now, specifically with this product, we're really as of this week, we're leaning really heavily on Columbia University and the MTA to basically prove the efficacy of it. But outside of that, we have all the clinical data that shows, like I said, against the class 1 norovirus, which is the hardest to kill. And then you sort of just go down the list and say, well, as long as we're following the EPA emerging pathogen guidelines, we're good.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ricky. There are a few more questions, but we're going to save them just because we are starting to kind of get a little, I'm getting a little concerned about time. So we're going to go to Mark from Weeks Lerman, and we're going to learn a little bit about procurement.
Thank you, Gayatri. Thank you, Gayatri, Nadia, ALA, New York City, and of course the LFSN, and of course to my fellow panelists. So for those of you that are not familiar with Weeks Lerman, it's going to sound really cliche, but we do everything for the office. So specifically today, we're going to talk about eco-friendly supplies and how that relates to PPE supplies. We're going to talk about, just so you know, for the future, office products, printing, coffee and break room services, managed print services, furniture design and space planning, janitorial cleaning supplies, tabs, et cetera, et cetera. And those of you that have supported us, we really appreciate it. Next slide. So we're going to talk about what items are the must-haves when you go back to the office, and I guess first and foremost, everyone's thinking about masks. The one on the left over there is the N95. It should not be used at law firms. They should be used strictly for healthcare and the doctors on the front lines. But the masks that have been very popular for people going back to the office have been the two in the center, which is the one on the left is the KN95, China's version of the N95, and the one to the right of that, well, my right, and that is the 3-ply disposable mask. These have been very popular amongst companies that are gearing back to go back to the office. However, they're not sustainable. You purchase them, you should be wearing them once, and you throw them out. I would assume that people that are purchasing the KN95, which is at a higher price point, probably wearing them a little bit more often. Maybe some of these masks people are wearing around Manhattan in the Ubers, the taxis, or commuting in the subways. I know Jennifer mentioned earlier about using bicycles, and that would be a great way, or walking even, to get around. But ideally, everyone's going to have to commute. But what is a sustainable option, and actually is a cost-effective option, are reusable washable masks. And these masks, they could be 100% polyester, they could be cotton, cloth, whatnot. Some of these masks, you could actually, they stretch, so you could put them over your KN95s or your 3-ply masks. And while these masks probably have a higher purchase price off the bat, if you're using them 2 dozen, 3 dozen times and washing them, getting good use out of them, you're actually saving money in the long run. So for example, if one of those disposable masks cost X, and that's, let's say, 5 times more the price or 5 times less the price than a washable mask, in the long run, you're going to get, it'll be more cost effective and you're going green. If we go to the next slide, I'll show you a little bit about one of those washable masks. So this specific one stretches, you could actually imprint on it. You could do the law firm's logo right there on it. Great option. Again, these masks can stretch. This specific one is actually the same material that's used in like sweat wicking material, kind of like that athleisure that everybody wears these days. So it's a great option. I showed this one because it was made in America, so you don't have to wait for it to come from overseas or anything like that. And it's a quick turnaround, and we're giving back to our economy. Next slide, please. Just one statement they should have mentioned as far as masks. We don't know what the future holds in regards to visitors or people coming to the office. So it's impossible to say that you're going to have a cloth or a fabric or whatnot washable mask for everybody. But having it for your staff is important. And then probably having the 3-ply mask, which is an inexpensive option compared to the KN95 and some other options, maybe at your front desk, at your reception, or to hand out to your staff as an alternative option, is probably the best way to go. It'll cut costs and it'll keep people safe. Wanted to talk a little bit about hand sanitizers. Listen, Purell and Gojo, those are the household name brands. Weeks on, we're actually one of the bigger distributors across the country for Purell, but you can't get it. It's on back order, specific to us and to other large distributors. We get shipments weekly, but small, minimal compared to what we used to get, and obviously there's a shortage of supply. So these days, any source that you can get a supply for sanitizer, as long as it meets the minimum requirements. Healthcare is over 70%, 72%. But for legal, I think you're fine with 60% or more. But how do we stay sustainable with hand sanitizers? The focus, or what I would suggest, is you guys buy it by the gallon, and then you refill the smaller containers. So on the top right, you'll notice these small containers that are good for individuals to use and to travel with. But you don't want them taking the bottle and throwing it out when they're done. Obviously not the sustainable option, not a cost-effective option either. And so what you want to do is you want to be purchasing large portions by the gallon, which is shown in the image below, and then refilling these for your staff. Another option that you want to have is you want to have the stands or the kiosks everywhere, so that when you come off the elevators, when you walk into the office, and probably placed in high touch areas coming out of the bathroom or whatnot, you want to have these hand sanitizer kiosks. A lot of the ones that are becoming popular, because again, Purell has been on such back order, are other manufacturers coming up with options that work. And I thought that the two in the bottom were interesting, both of which use your foot. So they're used by the pedal. And the one on the left holds 4 gallons of sanitizer. So you don't have to change it. Obviously, it's sustainable because the more sanitizer, you're getting 3,000 hand washes out of it. And what's cool about this one is you can wrap it with the firm name on it or anything. This is good for your buildings, good for your office. The one next to it also holds a gallon of sanitizer. When you talk about gloves, I'm not going to tell you not to wear gloves because I wear gloves everywhere. But the blue nitriles, the latex, the vinyl, all very popular, obviously. But there's some statistics out there that people are saying that people wear gloves, but they don't take them off properly. And so as soon as they take them off, they have to use the sanitizer anyway. So gloves, not necessarily the most sustainable option. Sanitizer being a more sustainable option. Just food for thought. Next slide, please. The break room, and how do we go back to the office and maintain a good break room or a safe break room? We were going to discuss individually wrapped cutlery. So on the top shelf, the top of these items here, you have individually wrapped forks, knives, spoons. You have a dispenser. All you're touching is the next package that would be for you, so you're not touching anybody else's stuff. And there's individually wrapped cups, and of course creamers, because you don't want to have the universal creamer that everyone's putting their hands on. All very important items as we gear back to go to work. Everyone has to eat. The alternative option, which is more sustainable, is that we purchase washable cutlery for individuals. They can keep it in their drawers. They would be responsible for washing it. And you have forks, spoons, and knives. I showed a few images there, but of course there's plenty of options. And of course the swell bottle, even keep it in my own home. Water bottles, things of that nature, things that your staff can clean themselves and are responsible for themselves. But this way, nobody's sharing anything, nobody's touching other items, they're not putting their hand into a sleeve and touching a cup and maybe touching the next one at the same time. So just all things to think about and how you could do it. You could do it a sustainable way, or you could just do it, both being safe options. Of course, cornstarch cutlery is an option too for recyclable goods, but just things to think about. As we move on to the next slide, I know we touched a little bit about some of this earlier, but I'll just jump into it real fast. Everybody's purchasing right now the infrared thermometers, very important to have on hand. Some of the other options on this page show ICI, which is one of the leading manufacturers, only 2 globally that have the 510K FDA approved rating. They had this before SARS, and this is more for your buildings. It's more for the high-end restaurants, at the airports, at the event centers, just a way to take someone's temperature, make sure that everybody's healthy, otherwise alarms sound. And for the office environment, what's become real popular is this Meridian kiosk, and it has facial recognition, so it recognizes who works in your office. And of course, and it's no touch. And if somebody comes off the elevator and trying to get into the office and they have a temperature, an alarm will sound. We sell the equipment, and of course, we can walk you through the process as well. Next slide. Sorry if I'm going fast. Social distancing barriers, Kevin touched on this earlier, so I'll just go through it real quickly. Plenty of options. To Kevin's point earlier, we don't know what the future holds. So in a year, God willing, there's a vaccine, hopefully sooner, but we don't want to make any permanent changes. We're designing one of our hotel's corporate centers recently, and their idea was to pack as many people into the office as possible pre-COVID. And obviously now that gearing up to reopen, they came to us and said, well, how should we redesign this? So obviously keeping people on a schedule and a B schedule is one thought. But I didn't want to I didn't think it was appropriate to redesign it and all of a sudden do half the amount of people in the office or as far as workstations, because in 2 years, they might be spending more money. So putting up acrylic options and partitions, plexiglass, glass options, things that you can clean. You can do fabric as well, but I would steer toward the plexiglass or the acrylics, things that wipe down quick and easy for sneeze guards. Reception should definitely have them, as well as the workstations, and this is really the way to go. It's the short-term fix, and that way you're not stuck into anything when hopefully this all passes. Next slide, sir. Bye. Cool. So other items that are being used right now are barriers and ways to separate the room. And the option on the left shows at the top some vinyl options, which are not necessarily sustainable. But on the bottom, it shows a couple different products that are eco-friendly. And they're made with a specific COVID solution architectural paper. The paper is made of wood pulp and has a fiberglass in it that makes it fire retardant, which is good for all commercial spaces. They're decorative, but they're also space dividers. So just wanted to give you guys some other food for thought. There's a recycle program also that we have to take them away. Hopefully down the line, something to look into. And of course, on the vinyl banners at the top, fabric banners would be more of an eco-friendly option. On the left, we have Pure Leave, something that Weeks Women actually had in our bathrooms before COVID. It's just a way to stay sanitary. If you're like me, I'm the guy that takes the paper towel and puts it on the door handle before I leave the restroom because I don't want to touch the door handle that anyone else touched. This Pure Leave is pretty cool. It automatically dispenses. So when you go to open the door, there's an antimicrobial, sorry guys, that was embarrassing, that you pull. Once you open the door, that goes right back into the dispenser. This is a green solution. The system incorporates lead-free electronics, which is a low-power system resulting in reduced energy consumption. And the door handle, like I said, it doesn't use paper, it uses antimicrobial sleeve material. Again, all green solutions. Next page, please.
Mark, I want to make sure that we have enough time for Marion and just for, so maybe if you can just highlight a couple bullet points so that we have enough time to for questions, because we have a lot of questions for you for later.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. So just everyone already touched on the posters. So very important. No really need to go through it. Walls, floors, 6 feet apart. Your elevator should have one in each corner. People should be facing each corner of the elevator to stay safe. Just lots of options with these. Happy to answer questions afterwards. Additional barriers that could be used for separating people.
Okay.
And of course, back to work kits. What items are needed by employees, whether it's the mask that we discussed earlier, wipes, gloves, just a little packet. You could put your print your name on it. But these are things that have been popular, so I thought I'd add it. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it.
You know what? I'm going to just have one question for you now before. One of the questions was about the sanitizers. With the touchless sanitizer dispensers, how can we source refill units if stocks are not available or low?
Right. So that's why I mentioned I don't want to push one sanitizer over another, but I mentioned how Purell has been on back order and hard to get. Obviously, they're going to healthcare first when they do come in. But all these other brands out there, you can get. So specific to the units I showed you, that large unit actually has a cartridge that goes in it. What you would do is you would enter into a program and they would deliver it to you every 2 weeks, every month, whenever, depending on your usage and the size of the firm is needed. So you can definitely get sanitizers. There's enough out there. It just might not be the brand that you're used to.
Okay, well, thank you, Mark. There are a ton of questions, so I want to make sure we have time for them.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. Gail was going to come do her presentation, but we're going to have Marion talk a little bit about large-scale operations from a hotel point of view. Since we are running a lot out of time, I'm going to have Marion just kind of highlight a few things that they are doing at the hotel. And then we're going to have Gail kind of do a little bit of Q&A and just do some highlights on policies to think of, and then you can ask her some questions. So Marion, it'd be great if you want to share what what you guys are doing.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll be quickly and bullet pointing on what the hotel side is doing on reopening our doors back to our clients and our associates. So Le Méridien, part of Marriott Hotels, has already taken on the initiatives of incorporating some of the items that were mentioned prior on this call, such as the sanitizing sprays as well as the UV lighting to sanitize those rooms. Another thing that we're, incorporating us as on the sustainability side is that we had already installed air dryers as opposed to napkins in the bathrooms and everywhere where our associates as well as guests need to have air dryers, I'm sorry. And as well as the going back to the hand sanitizer, we've also gone into the sustainability side. So we installed those everywhere possible for our guests as well as our associates. But reopening our hotels. So back at the end of March, we many of our hotels within the Marriott brand had to, as well as many other brands, had to close down because of what's going on. So reopening took about a 3-week plan, if not a little longer. We needed to ensure that during that time that a hotel was closed, we did an extensive walkthrough throughout the hotel, inspecting all guest rooms, floors, public spaces, and ensuring that the machinery and everything that we have in those guest rooms as well as throughout the hotel are working properly. We changed filters for the ACs. We treated the water a few weeks before opening. We let the water run. The cooling tower was treated. Deep cleaning of carpets, elevator maintenance, elevator deep cleaning. We just had to work together with Ecolab on general cleaning and very deep cleaning so that we're able to open up back again. And as far as bringing back our associates, we are in a union environment in New York City, so we had to prepare for that a few weeks prior. Part of the preparation was ensuring that we have all the PPE for them so that they're safe and that they feel comfortable returning back to work, especially for our housekeeping team. We purchased the signs that were mentioned on this call prior. We have signs, we put them on the floor, social distancing. We require all associates to take trainings, both on the Marriott side as well as on the hotel side. And they are all going reorientation pretty much with new guidelines, with new suggestions and how to go about working on this new environment. We trained all our staff, from management to line staff. If we can just go into the next slide. We have gone and we're in the process of completely going across the brands on the Marriott side mainly to ensure that all guests have the option to digital check-in through your mobile apps, so you don't have to stop by the front desk if you don't want to. A lot of the Bonvoy members have their apps on their phones, so it'll be a much easier and quicker check-in process without having to interact with others at the front desk. In the bottom of this slide, you can see how it's not so clear, but the glass is there. The plexiglass is there as far as protection for both associates as well as our guests. There's barricades, there's the signs on the bottom that you can see. It's a little faded out, but we have signs of where, and those signs begin at the entrance of the hotel, showing each guest directions pretty much of where to go and how to keep social distancing throughout the process of checking and getting into your room. Part of the process that we did on opening this hotel, we did not, this hotel's 240 rooms, and we decided to just open it with 50% of the inventory. Part of that is to ensure that we're able to maintain social distancing, that we're able to cater to all our guests that are coming in, and as well as on the associate side. So not everyone is back to work. We've incorporated this whole remote workforce on departments and areas where we're able to, such as myself. I am currently working remote for the past 2.5 months, overseeing several properties on different states of doing that, different states, different markets. And we've been incorporating virtual tours where we no longer, the clients are open to seeing a hotel room, a meeting space through a virtual tour. So we've been trying to work around those guidelines, and we could expect on the office space side to continue to do that, and most likely go on a lot of remote positions as we move forward, continuing to return to some normality. In this slide, you can see how we've pointed out some of the specifics that our housekeeping team has been trained on, as well as everyone that has connections with the guest directly, and how to focus on certain areas when cleaning a room, to ensure that we are perhaps not always focusing on that on a normal basis, but now it's a major focus to ensure that we're touching every doorknob, every remote control on a more detailed manner. We've also thought about our associates mainly and their health, and we have a hotline available for them to ensure that they're good, that they're feeling comfortable working. We are following all of our Marriott guidelines and incorporating into new ones within the hotel. You can go into the next slide, please. In here, you can visualize the lobby of this property, this hotel that's on 57th Street in New York, and how the lobby is, as it is a little bit cozy. So we had to ensure that we put signs as much as possible to direct our guests of how to check in without cluttering everyone by the front desk area. So you can see the signs directing them how to go around, as well as our elevators. We've put up signs advising them that we would want 2 people at a time. With the occupancy being low at this point, it's an easier thing done right now, and everyone has been so open to their safety, so that it hasn't been a challenge at all incorporating all these new guidelines. Next slide, please. And here I wanted to share a little bit of what's going on as far as meeting rooms or event space throughout the hotels. And we're currently still working as a brand, as a hotel, on figuring the diagrams of all our meeting spaces. We've been setting up social distancing for meetings, making sure that there is enough social distance in between any type of setup that the client is looking to have. So in here, you're able to see how a U-shape would look like with social distancing guidelines that are on at the current time. There's diagrams in there. We're looking to, for the meantime, at least for the rest of the year, until hopefully we have better news in regards to this, that we're reducing our capacity by 50%. So a ballroom that fit 200 people will now probably fit 100. So we're ensuring that open space and ventilation is appropriate in all this event space so that everyone can feel comfortable. And I'm not sure if I have one more slide.
So that is the last slide. So Marian, thank you. We're going to go to some questions. Thankfully, Gail was able to join a little bit later. So she was going to talk a little bit about policies. I know we're kind of getting to the end of our time, but for those of you who'd like to stay a little bit later, we're going to go through some of these questions. And I'm going to pose a few questions to Gail that some of you had for some policies. So I'm going to go to one of the first questions that we have. And Tina asks, and this is really for Mark, are there alternatives to milk in addition to creamers?
The alternatives, sorry, one more time, to milk?
Are there alternatives to milk in addition to creamers that can be used in the pantry or the cafe?
Well, fresh milk needs to be refrigerated. So alternatives to milk. shoot me an email and I'll get back to you with the different options that are available. Because there are powdered milk options, there's fresh milk options, and there's other alternatives. I just need to know a little bit about what specifically you're looking for, and then I could shoot you what options are available.
Okay, no worries. Then this question is really more for Gail. Gail, so some folks are worried that when they start to create workplace policies, how do they ensure that they're not creating any discriminatory policies while protecting those that might be vulnerable?
That's a very good question. And I think that number one, document everything. Number two, when you come up with your return from work policy, make sure it's attorney reviewed. And everybody has to sign that they received, read, and understood it. Number two, if a woman over 60 comes into HR and says, I can't work here, I have to work remote. Okay, that's nobody else's business but her and the HR department. And somebody else brought up earlier about EAP, and that's employee assistance programs. Definitely tell everybody about them. If somebody has young children at home and school's closed, and they have to work from home, okay, they have to work from home. No law firm is going to get a gold medal for having everybody return to work in 3 weeks. And we're expecting about 50% of our workforce going forward will be working from home. So I think that the thing is just document, and don't tell somebody, oh, you're over 60, so we're putting you in a different section, or you have to work from home even though you want to come in. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does. And so this, I think, is also for you and maybe some of the folks who've been talking about these temperature taking devices. So if we're taking temperatures, are you finding that it should be really more of an HR responsibility or to hire an outside party to administer?
Number one, the person who this will probably fall on will be your receptionist. And I'm not a betting woman, but I would bet the receptionist doesn't have a medical background. I think that the better thing to do is check with your landlords. If they're checking downstairs, let them check. I think it's better. We're all grown adults. If I have to sign something, before I come in saying that I don't feel sick, I don't have diarrhea, I don't have, a temperature over 100, then that's on me. And I sign it, and that's good. And I've heard, and I could be wrong because I saw some people were saying that they have them for sale, but I'm told that they're not reliable. There's probably a margin of inaccuracy in them. So I wouldn't want to have my receptionist take my temperature and then have to record it and then put it somewhere secure. Better for a questionnaire just to say, Gail, do you have a fever today? No.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to kind of keep in that same strain, but this is going to have to do with some sterilization questions. So this question is, so when we talk about the UV lighting, does it only sterilize surfaces that the light touches? Is that correct? So it wouldn't clean the bottom of a package in tent, for example?
Correct. It only can disinfect what the light sees. So let's say in a tent, we would put the package on a wire rack, and if you wanted to get 100% confidence, you can then flip it around and do it twice.
Okay. So there are a couple more questions in that. What size area can a unit disinfect effectively?
So there are two primary units right now. One is we call the F1, which is a 10 by 10 area. The second is an F2, which is a 12 by 12 area. You're basically limited because, again, it's light and how far that light can travel and how the strength of that light, when it's hitting that surface. So we can do more in depth based on the space or the area. We can help with recommendations, layouts, and anything like that.
So maybe then we'll have some follow-up questions because there's another question that asks, how large of an area does one unit cover? And then there's another question, if you have about 30,000 square feet, how many units would you need?
Right. So on a 30,000 square foot, we would have to do a layout and see what makes the most sense. I think for today and getting back to work and all the conversations that I've had, it's really about those high touch, high traffic areas. You know, you can do a large area like that, but I don't think it's going to be feasible or practical in all honesty.
Okay, and so let's go for this question. Do you think that wands are worth purchasing? How much do the units you talked about cost approximately, and what is the time frame for getting them?
So I know when I talked about wands before, Jennifer gave me the thumbs up. I'd like to hear her 2 cents on the what maybe her perspective on wands and what she's seen, and then you go back to the second part of the question.
Yeah, so similar to what Ricky mentioned, you know, you can buy ones on Amazon, but it's suspect. The science just isn't there to support a lot of the claims that they're making. And I think, you know, again, we go back to that human health aspect, and does it really make sense for people to be holding something in their hand that they really shouldn't be physically in contact with? I'm a much larger proponent of UV lighting, sort of similar to what Ricky's displayed, either on a stand or in a ceiling, and used at times when no one is around, or when it can be completely shielded.
Okay.
What was this? Was there a second part to that question, or does that cover it?
Sorry. I actually I don't remember.
Pricing.
The second part was
Pricing,
about
yes.
pricing and like how quickly you could get them.
Okay, yeah. So we could like I said, you could email me. We could send pricing and go through availabilities. If there is going to be limited availability, about basically in June, and then as production ramps up and you know there'll be some product in the market.
Okay. So now here is a new question, and this has to do with carpet and signage. So do you have a resource for tape or anything that we can adhere to carpet for signage that is safe to use and won't ruin the carpet? Okay, so does anyone have a thought on that? Whether it's Mark or Richard?
I could jump in. You know, there is definitely vinyl out there that will adhere to carpet. Will it stay down on the carpet is a whole nother conversation, and you know, but they won't leave the residue. If my suggestion would be, there are some carpet manufacturers and some matting manufacturers that are making mats that have the signage embossed on them, and you can lay the mat down on top of the carpet, and it'll stay and it won't ruin the carpet underneath.
Okay. Perfect.
There's also
So,
discs available, and they kind of lie on top. Although in an environment like a law firm, where you're in hallways and things, it could be a little bit of a risk.
okay, great. So another question. So one of these questions had to do with cleaning the office. So when we talked about needing to clean the office, this person said, I think the information is good, but we don't have a staff that cleans the office after working hours. So no one, I assume, does. So perhaps this information should be given to our landlord or building manager. The same holds true somewhat about the HVAC system. The recommended numbers are good, but what do we do as a tenant to do like to make major or minor changes to our HVAC system?
So, so any changes that you make to your HVAC system are going to have to go through your landlord and your facilities people. In most tenant applications, you do not own the base building unit. It is sometimes also expressly prohibited that you do anything to change it per your lease. What you can do is downstream, the ductwork is typically, you know, installed by the tenant. And there are times you can make changes to that, which means that if you do have Fan boxes that are downstream of your base building unit, you could upgrade the filters on those through whoever's doing your preventative maintenance work. Somebody would come through quarterly and change your filters on fan boxes, those kind of things. But that work is also usually done by the building. So all of this, I think, just sort of goes back to having that conversation with your building, finding out, you know, what the limitations are, because they're probably laid out explicitly in your lease, what you can and cannot change, and then go from there. And then similarly, if your building is not doing your cleaning for you, I'm not sure who is, unless you're hiring a third-party company to come in to do that. And then again, it's about having conversations with those people. Or yeah, if you're not cleaning, I don't know, you got to figure that out. That's a big deal.
Okay, so there are some questions where some folks would like for Gail, if you could cover some portions of your presentation and kind of talking a little bit about policies. So a lot of folks are wanting to stay a little bit later, so that Gail, that you can kind of highlight some of your presentation and some of your talking points.
Me.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. All right, so the very first thing that I think we that everyone should do is come up with a committee. And I know that that's an overstated event in legal, but pull together a partner, an associate, and 2 members who are not attorneys of your firms. And make sure that you come up with some type of routine. Did Gail sign the return to work letter? Did she participate in the meeting? Is she being a good citizen? Now, you know, am I wearing a mask all the time? Because you know there's going to be some people who say, I'm not wearing this mask, I don't need it. And I think that that has to be recorded, that they're not doing it. You tell them to do it, and then they're what do I want to say? They're will find a penalty. You will be penalized. You will be, and partners very easy, or attorneys very easy. Well, actually, all of us very easy to penalize us on year-end discretionary bonuses. And the other thing is, what I found in the past is, anytime you publicly humiliate someone, they tend to be a little more compliant. You will find people, you know, you're not going to get everybody to comply. So it's important to have them comply, because you have to not only protect them, but protect everyone else. Okay, next slide. Okay, and the other thing is it may make sense to put together a something outside. I think somebody had mentioned a like an iPad outside of your suite, and this is where I would come in and I would say, okay, you know, again, I answer the questionnaire, the 5 questions, and then I'm allowed in. And those questions are recorded electronically. No one sees them but HR, so it's secure, and the firm is protected. And if somebody answers where they say, I have a fever, well, then you can't come in, you got to go home. And then call HR and decide what you're going to do then. And that goes for visitors as well. And there's also, I'm working with a vendor business partner who is putting together a questionnaire that can be done on people's iPhones. So, and it's good for like an hour after you enter it. So you could be leaving the house and answer all the questions and then just be able to walk in. Again, you're not touching a common space, you're touching your iPhone and you're able to get in. So I think that that's important. And somebody did mention, well, we talked about it. The other thing is that your HR department, they are not psychiatrists. Please, please, please make sure that they have a list of the suicide hotlines, the alcoholism. I mean, in legal, we sit at 33% of us are either drug addicted or alcohol addicted. The nationwide average is 11%. We're 3 times higher. So we have to make sure that you can expect this to happen. So make sure you have those hotlines. and make sure that they're free and available to everyone. And again, your employment assistance program, employee assistance program, be very, very helpful. And again, you don't penalize people if they got to go home for whatever reason. Next slide. I think I'm done. And I said all that. So my point being is document the, oh, and one other thing that's not on these slides, but is critical. Call your insurance company. If you have a business owner policy, make sure you are individually named. As an administrator, you are individually named. Because when there's a lawsuit, it's going to come to the firm severally and then to people individually. And administrators will be sued individually. Make sure you are individually named.
So Gail, there's actually a couple questions for you. So what if people don't want to work in the office anymore? Is it something you would just say temporarily? Like what's your thought on that?
Well, I have to tell you that you're going to find people who don't want to work in the office anymore. And if the work that they do allows it, that's fine. You have to have a very, very, very detailed work from home policy, which includes, you know, how much internet bandwidth do you have, where are you working, what kind of insurance, and on and on. So yeah, that can be done. Why not? Why not? We can expect that, at least what I heard in a meeting of the large law firms, many of them thought that they would not be returning to what they consider normal for 18 months. And if it becomes a problem where, let's say I'm a paralegal and the 3 attorneys that I support need me in the office and I say I want to work from home, well, that's not working then, is it? So if you can't accommodate, you can't accommodate. But I think that you will find more people working from home.
So here's actually another one for you. So do employers run the risk of violating employees' human rights when you ask them to wear masks? And do you have to provide masks?
I would provide a mask. I don't know if you have to, but I think that I would provide a mask. I know that when I go into the supermarket, I'm required to wear a mask. There's an executive order in New Jersey. I'm 99% sure there's one in New York. You got to wear a mask. And if somebody doesn't want to wear a mask or they feel as though it's a human, then work from home. And I said this to a partner the other day. He goes, well, I'm not wearing a mask. I don't have to wear. I go, well, if everybody came into work in their underwear, would that be okay by you? Same thing. You have to wear a mask and consider it just regular clothing. And I would provide them. And I would provide one reusable mask. And then for guests or anyone else that comes in who's not an employee, they would get a disposable mask. They're $1 or $1.50. It's not worth it. Consider it insurance.
Okay. So there are just a few more questions that we have. So I'm going to just pull this up. So here, this is an interesting one. Has anyone developed a way to track employee health status through an app? And is there so has anyone actually been using any sort of app to track employee health status, and is that okay?
It darn well better be secure, and it better only go to HR. And as I said earlier, I'm working with a business partner to come up with a questionnaire that can be on people's cell phones. That will only go very secure from cell phone to office, depending on the type of the way they store their data.
Okay. So then this question is related to masks. I assume that if a person has their own office, they won't have to wear a mask. It would only be in public places.
Okay.
So
keep the door shut.
I'll field this one. We talked about this. Your air in your office is recirculated. There's no special air that comes from your HVAC unit to an individual office. And then the air that comes out of that office goes back up into the return, which is essentially everything that's above the ceiling tiles, right? And then is then recirculated and shared back through the office. So your door does not protect you. Your walls do not protect you in a private office.
You.
So
okay.
I would recommend wearing your mask at all times when you are in the office.
Okay.
So now here's a question. So this was from earlier. So wouldn't an alarm sounding if someone has a temperature violate privacy laws if it was used on employees?
I can't speak
I
to
think we
privacy
might
laws.
be overthinking it. I think we might be overthinking it, and the alarm doesn't have to sound, and one person will see it. I don't know that it's going to go wah, wah, wah. I think it's just a, they put it to your forehead and the person's going to see a number. It's just that that person has to be properly trained what to do if somebody has over 100-degree temperature. I don't know. How about one of you guys that has that are selling the thermometers? What do you think?
So I agree with what you said as far as the thermometers, the infrareds, you know, the receptionist or whomever's handling it at the front will know that that person is over the certain temperature. But in regards to the kiosks, there are alarms. It could be customized so that it's not necessarily sounding through the office and alerting anybody. I can't speak to privacy concerns. That's more of an HR question. But, you know, the kiosks are expensive units, and I know they could be customized. So I'm sure they could do it in a way that would not alert the entire staff.
Now, here's another question. So phasing in staffing, what's being done in terms of in regards to staffing and controlling the number of people in the office? Like, what are the recommendations for right now?
And taking a look at what the governor has shared, again, I'm just going to go with the 6 feet social distancing. And something like if you have a stand-up desk, make sure that you have a cover that goes with the stand-up desk. One person allowed in a kitchen at a time or in a pantry. One person allowed, the same thing with the elevators or anything. I think most people have what I call quiet rooms, breastfeeding rooms. If somebody is using it, they have to make sure that it is somehow sanitized after that person uses it.
Okay, and then we have another question. So since a lot of these items there aren't so many of them, there are some shortages, how do you handle PPE shortages?
Order now. I don't think we're opening up for a couple of weeks. I mean, I don't have my crystal ball with me, but I don't think we're opening up for a couple of weeks. So order now.
I agree with Gail. From what I've seen on my side of things, customers, there's items that are, I can speak for my company, and we are sourcing from every available option to get product in. And, there's back orders that could be thousands of clients long, essentially, or thousands of units long. And if half a million items for that specific product comes in today in a hospital, because healthcare gets, first, it takes half of that, the back order is going to extend out till the next time that supply comes in. So to Gail's point, order now. I stated it with the Purell kiosks. Those items are coming in, I believe it's July, mid-June, July. But people, hundreds, if not thousands of them have already been placed. The sooner you place the order, you'll be sooner on that list, so that when they do become available, they'll get it prior. But order soon.
Here's another one. So does anyone have experience with ozone air fresheners, as ozone is proven to kill the virus, and as a gas, it can get everywhere? I know they use them in airports, but never known them in an office. Anyone have thoughts on the ozone and its use for air quality?
No, so the one thing I'll say is that I know that there are air purifiers out there that the end byproduct ends up creating ozone. And generally from an environmental standpoint, this is bad. So so we never recommend those types of air purifiers. I would stay away from it from an environmental standpoint.
So along the same strain, has there been any thoughts given to wearing masks for hours at a time and the effect of carbon dioxide not being released properly when one does not wearing the masks and the physical effects that has on a person?
I don't know of any studies. I've not read anything related to that.
Okay. Then another question is, how do we safely and sustainably dispose of PPE equipment like gloves and masks?
That was a question that was brought up yesterday in another meeting, and one person suggested check with your landlord. Is your landlord going to have, you can have, you know, the blue bucket where it's all the PPE stuff. But if the cleaning staff that comes in is throwing it in with everything else, why? So check with your landlord and see what they're recommending you to do.
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment. The one other thing I would say is that if your landlord isn't specifically doing something with it, that you may choose to provide waste receptacles with lids throughout that are like foot pedal operated throughout the space, and designate those as places where people can dispose of gloves and masks and those things, because you just don't want that to be recirculated.
So now there is. Go ahead, Mark.
No, to both Gail and Jennifer's point, I was working with a very large national law accounting firm yesterday in regards to that, putting them in high touch areas, and they didn't want anything where they could actually touch the pail. Obviously, it has to close the lid, so it was either something with a sensor or something with a pedal. So if your building won't handle it, there are items out there that you could do this for and put them in high touch areas.
Okay, so I'm just going to go with two more questions, and then I think we're going to close it off, because I apologize for having everyone stay on, and I thank you guys for answering all these questions. Big questions coming up about commuting and transportation. So do any of you have thoughts on how to manage the risks of commuting to work with mass transit?
Well, I think somebody brought up a good point earlier where if you can bike in, bike in. If you can walk in, walk in. You know, we all are watching the news, and they're telling us that they're disinfecting every subway car and every New Jersey Transit and LIRR on a, but how effective is it? And if somebody feels unsafe or doesn't want to do it, let them work from home for a couple more months until there's some, a little more closure.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with Gail. I mean, there's only so many things that you can control, and unfortunately, the frequency with which those train cars are being cleaned, I think, is also still once a day. So there is risk to getting on a train. And somebody mentioned earlier, if we're all coming back, even if it's in shifts, that that while the train cars may be a little bit more lightly populated, you're not going to be able to get your physical distancing in those areas. So even more important that you're wearing your mask during those times, and you immediately wash your hands when you get to the office, and do all of those things that we know have been recommended.
Okay.
One of the things has done is also negotiated on special employee rates currently with the parking garages in the area, so that if anyone wishes to drive in as opposed to taking public transportation, that has been something we've been working on. So majority of anyone that's working right now has been driving in as opposed to commuting in public transportation.
I think the last piece I would add to that, something that we've been recommending that our employees do when they're out on the construction sites, is that when you come home, you immediately change your clothes. You take your clothes and you put them in the wash right away if you can, or you secure your clothes that you've been wearing on the train and all day long with the rest of your colleagues, in a bin, in a hamper that is closed as well until it is time for you to be able to do your laundry. And then, again, wash your hands. I mean, I think you just can't be safe enough in the very early weeks of returning to work. And I think that's going to be an important piece.
Okay, so here is going to be our last question. So how do we protect our receptionists?
Put up one of those big glass or those plastic borders, not unlike what you see at the supermarkets. And if she needs on the other side of where, and I'm saying the other side of where she's sitting, maybe like a shower curtain, clear lining, so that she's protected 100%. And anybody who relieves her, there's got to be some type of cleaning going on, whoever's relieving her.
Marion, is that what you guys are doing at the hotel as well?
Yeah. If you, I show the picture where we put a plexiglass on both sides of the reception desk. Our reception area is not the largest, and we've also put some signs of what's the closest that anyone can stand in front of our front desk agents. So we've also put what do you call that? The elastic area, like you have them in the banks, basically, so that that also prevents people getting too close to everyone there. Obviously, everyone's supplied with extra individual cleaning supplies there and hand sanitizers for them because they're there. They can't really move out of there that often from the reception area as everybody else.
Okay. Well, very good. Folks, I'm going to give you an opportunity to just give us a lasting thought. Maybe we go in the order that you guys all presented, but if you just want to give a last thought of just what people should just keep in mind as they start to consider reopening.
So I think that my top one is that, be flexible, be prepared for everything to change. There is no silver bullet in terms of the building, but just communicate. That's it.
So then I'm going to have Gail go next, just because you were supposed to be second in our lineup.
Oh, document. I said it earlier. Do not document, and make sure everything is secure. You've got people. You've got to worry about HIPAA. You've got to worry about discrimination. Make sure everything is secure.
Okay. And then Kevin, if you want to if you have a thought.
Sure. I mean, everybody's office is filled with furniture, and it's a large spend. The initial spend and everything that associated with what we're talking about, how permanent or how temporary is it? Things should be thoughtfully through. Somebody said it earlier, you don't want to be reminded of COVID every time you turn around. So there has to be a lot of thought put in it. The audits that we do, take that into consideration. And then the earlier question that I was asked, would we come to the office? The answer is absolutely. And for anybody who wants that would like to have additional conversation, they certainly can reach out to Rosemary Farrell or myself. And thank you all.
Thank you. And Richard, do you have anything to guide our folks with?
Yeah, we're all very serious about this, a serious situation, but we're bringing people back. Think about lightening it up for them and think of ways to bring people together safely and not scare the heck out of them when they come back. I think we do have to take a lighthearted approach, and that's just more of my philosophy. And I wish everybody all the best of luck coming back.
And then I'm going to go to you, Ricky. Do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I think with specific UV disinfection, it's in addition to, it's not a one size fits all strategy. So it could be part of your strategy. It could be on demand. It's chemical free. We have a safe way to do it. It can be automated. So when we talk about disinfecting of spaces, this could be one of those strategies, and we can talk more about how it can fit your program and your space.
Thank you. And Mark?
Specific to Weeks Slaughterman, we want to keep people safe. For those people that can work from home and be just as productive, that's great. But for the people that are going to be in the office, you got to think about what the mandatory items are that, you know, would make them feel comfortable in commuting to your office as well as in the office. Whether it's myself or one of my colleagues that you might reach out to, please, or that you might work with, please reach out. Happy to help. And thank you to Gayatri and ALA, LFSM, and Nadia.
And Miriam?
Sure. So coming from the hospitality side, I think it's a mixture of everything that everyone just mentioned, but it's a very sensitive times for many, and at the same time, it's about making everyone safe first, but about promoting that to our associates, making them feel comfortable and making them be safe at work is exactly what they will be able to share with every single guest that they encounter. So giving that comfort that we're doing our very best and actually doing it for them, for guests and associates to be comfortable and safe.
Okay, well, thank you so much, folks. I apologize that we have gone so over, but I hope that this was all helpful. And thank you, panelists, for staying on to answer all these questions. I just want to leave all of you with this last thought that the reason why we're having this session is we know that we have to reopen at some point. It's just a matter of when and what those considerations are. And as we open, there are ways to do things better. So not just do things in the same status quo, but there are ways to do things that reduce impact that might be better for our employees and take advantage of the new technologies that are out there, the new services that are out there. This is the time to start thinking out of the box. So I just want to leave you with that last thought. And thank you so much for attending today. And I really hope that you thought it was helpful. We'll have the recording and the handouts available and all of the contact information for all of our folks. If you want to ask questions, you can. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.